But today we start with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to hear oral arguments in just about an hour from right now in two cases that could determine whether states can ban transgender athletes who identify as women from competing in girls' and women's sports teams. Now, this is a legal fight that could have some big implications on transgender policies across the country. There are two cases that will be heard, and we will go through and unpack all of what the Supreme Court will be hearing today. Joining us right now to help us do that is the executive director of the American Parents Coalition. Alleigh Marré is here. You can give her a follow at Alleigh Marré. And Alleigh, thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, this is a big day today. We've been following the story for quite some time, even in our crazy state of California, where the state creates a whole different set of rules, I think, that most of the country probably would question. But take us through what the Supreme Court is going to be hearing today, because these are two different cases that will be argued in front of the justices.
That's right. So I think the biggest thing to understand about both of these cases is that how the Supreme Court rules on this is going to have implications for girls' sports as a whole. Should the Supreme Court rule against the girls in either of these cases, it would effectively render girls' sports illegal because we would not have the protections and the distinction between male and female. Everything that Title IX was established to protect, the opportunities that were established with Title IX to ensure fair competition for women and girls would be completely, or not just erased, but rendered illegal because there would be no legal distinction between men and women. So this is obviously something that I know you've been following very closely, us as well. I'm a mom. I have 4 kids, 2 daughters. And I was a college athlete myself, and this is something that is just so important to me because I know the opportunities and everything that's to be learned from sports, and I want to ensure that those opportunities are there for my daughters and for the next generation of women coming up behind us that our parents and grandparents fought so hard for us to have.
Yeah.
So this is a huge deal.
It was not that long ago. I was actually at the Nixon Library hosting an event with a bunch of Olympic athletes to celebrate the 50th anniversary at the time of Title IX. And it's just so bizarre to me that we have to sit here this morning, Alleigh, and I love that we get to meet each other and we get to chit-chat about things and these issues. But boy, the fact that we are having a conversation in 2026 about protecting women's sports just is a place I didn't think that we would be. And I'm conservative. I have a liberal mom. My liberal mom and I were having a conversation about this Supreme Court case. And I said, for a lot of women, college sports are the culmination, and you work towards that, right? Through high school, through college. This is a culmination of your dream if you're a student athlete. It's much harder for women to find a place in professional sports. This can sometimes be the end of the road, right, for women, for female athletes. And to take that away from them or to impact their records by having someone who is biologically set up to be stronger, to anybody with sensibility, this is just not fair.
Completely. And also, I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit. For most women, college is kind of the end of the athletic road. But what's important to remember is what we take from athletics is so much bigger than the sport itself. It's the leadership abilities, the camaraderie, the mentorship that comes from coaches and older athletes. The ability to learn how to win, but more importantly, how to lose and how to bounce back from that, how to build a skill set and work hard. And all of those things are being stripped from girls. And I also think it's important to think about, so much time and energy is spent on the girls who rightfully so lose their spots at podiums because of males.
That's right.
But I think what goes untalked about a lot is the girls who get cut from the teams to make space for those males. Oftentimes, those are the girls who stand to benefit the most from a spot on that team. They don't have the opportunity then to, learn that work ethic, that laundry list that we just went through, the camaraderie that they stand to benefit from, and all of these opportunities that come from just being a member of a team and being around girls your age and how to interact with people, how to be on a team. All of that is just totally stripped from all these girls who get cut to make a spot for the boys. And so it just has this ripple effect that is even just so much greater than seeing the visual of the young woman who worked her tail off her entire athletic career to be in the number 3 spot because there's 2 boys in front of her. It goes right down the line. And the toll that it takes on women and girls as a whole is honestly, it's immeasurable. And that's not hyperbole.
You know, you just mentioned that you were a student athlete as well and benefited from Title IX. Our generation did benefit, by and large, by protecting women's sports, by Title IX. How was it important to you? I've talked to women who kind of came of age during this time when Title IX was implemented. And I think maybe it's something we don't even consider, Alleigh, is that there were really no place for student athletes, or they'd have to join club teams and they'd have to do all these crazy travel schedules. How has Title IX and women's sports and this protection that we've had almost up until things have gotten crazy now impacted you directly?
You know, it's funny you say that. My oldest daughter is 7.5. We recently watched that movie about Trudy Ederle, the swimmer who was, world record swimmer, one of the first female swimming athletes for recognized internationally from the United States. Incredible athlete who many people have never heard of, but she was on the very, very front end of the introduction of women's swimming in sports and in the Olympics. And watching that movie with my daughter, and she goes, "Mom, there were no girls' sports teams." And it made me so happy that she had that perspective where she didn't even ever have to think of that spot not being there for her. And it really just hit home to me, A, what you're saying, how lucky I was where I came up in that, but B, that she didn't even think twice about it. And it was really one of those moments where I was like, man, we are very much on the right side of history here, because that's exactly what we're trying to protect. And for me personally, I grew up playing basketball and running cross country, 2 sports where it would be very obvious, if you're playing against men, because the physicalities of it are just so different. And I did grow up playing against boys at the YMCA, after school and in the evenings, because it made me better, because the real reality of men versus women is they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. But when you take the reins off of that being a pickup game and you make that your day to day, I would have never had a spot on the floor.
Yeah.
Never. And that's just the reality of it. 120 pound, 5'7" girls not getting on the court.
Why do you think this has become so controversial? Because it's something that just seems so common sense to me. And maybe just talking this through with you, maybe it's just the loudest voices that make this controversial. And maybe it really is kind of an 80-20 issue, like a lot of people like to say. But why is it that saying protecting women's sports and protecting women who play sports is somehow hateful today?
I think it's because the broader thing here is that for the left, it's not really about the sports. That's the entry point. It's the gender identity and ideology as a whole is very important to them. We've been seeing that a lot with some of these just more broadly transgender and medicalization of kids cases that are coming through. And I think that's probably the anchor there, and girls' sports stands in the way because it's one of the few places where there is a legal distinction between male and female. So as soon as you unravel the legal argument for there being a separation of sexes, all of a sudden bathrooms are fair game, locker rooms are fair game, and you really get this erosion of the sexes writ large. And I'm sure there's also the financial component and motivation behind it. You can't tell me that the American Academy of Pediatrics actually truly, from a scientific perspective, is going to stand there with a straight face and say that, we should be altering with the sex organs of a 12-year-old prepubescent child. I mean, there's no answer for that other than a political and financial motivation.
Well, and I think people profit in gray area, right? And they cause chaos in gray area. The more you can blur lines, the more that the bad actors can actually benefit from that.
Exactly. And so I think it's much broader than sports. It's just that's a place where there's there's a line in the sand, and they want to do everything they can to erase that, to pave the way for the gray areas.
We appreciate what you're doing. In our final moment here, Supreme Court is going to be hearing arguments today. We probably won't get a decision on this until June. But is it the appropriate place? Do you think that the Supreme Court, in your opinion, that this is a good idea for the Supreme Court to chime in and create a distinction here to protect women's sports? Is it their role?
I do think so. Just so that hopefully we can put it to bed in our favor and be done with it. I wish it didn't come to this point, but now that it has, and we have 27 states across the country who have tried to do the right thing, I think that needs to be reaffirmed, and we need to push the remaining states to provide those same protections for young women and girls.
You could take a look over at California. We'd appreciate having you here. I don't even mean to laugh. We have a lot of great moms out here who are trying to fight to protect our girls, much to the chagrin of Gavin Newsom in California. All right, Alleigh, it's so great to meet you. Alleigh Marré is the executive director of the American Parents Coalition. Thank you for the great work that you guys are doing. AmericanParentsCoalition.org. You can find out more, support the organization. And Alleigh, thanks so much. We'll be all watching today at 7 o'clock when these arguments start out here on the West Coast.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. All right.